Are you looking to buy a long-lasting SUV with all the bells and whistles for a reasonable price? Then stay tuned while we go over all the good, bad, and ugly of owning this 2015 Honda CRV EXL. And don't worry, there's far more good than bad because it's one of the best used SUVs you can get in its price range.
So you are looking at a 4th generation 2012 to 2016 Honda CRV. This is an EXL package. It has 185 horsepower inline 4. It's the Earth Dreams series. It does actually get around 30 miles per gallon for this little inline 4. So that 185 horsepower is pretty nice in terms of taking off and going down the road, but that does factor into having to slow this thing down. With this vehicle coming in around 3,500 pounds on average between the different models, it has to slow down. And if you're going 70 miles an hour, it's going to take you 284 feet to slow down. So those brake rotors are going to get a little warped. So what does that mean? Let's think about the brake rotors where it should stop and be real smooth. Well, it's like a warped record where it's right, and you're going to feel that vibration when you hit the brakes. So the trunk space on this is 35 cubic feet, which is a pretty impressive amount. It doesn't have the automatic opening, hatch on it, which big whoop, you're buying a Honda Civic, you're not buying anything else that's special. Oh, did I say Civic? It's a CRV. It's like the same thing but bigger. Seats fold down, which is an amazing factor as well. So if you have the ability to fold down the seats, that's really all you need in terms of hauling stuff. You can fit a whole bunch in here. Space back here is pretty good. I have no complaints about that. So what you can see on this seat back here, on the shorter side of the world, so there's a few inches between this car seat, which has plenty of room back here. But if I switch it to this side, over here, what you're going to notice is that this seat is actually all the way back, and so this seat's kind of crammed in here. Definitely, I think this is plenty of room. This is no different than the space in our Lexus RX 350. It's no different in the space in my Toyota Tacoma. This is pretty adequate in terms of fitting a car seat. I have the same issues in those vehicles, so obviously this is not a Tahoe. So that's a pretty standard size for the seats on the back of these. When we're talking about good features, this is a great feature right here. Having that climate control come into the back seat is a fantastic feature for this 2015 model, especially with kids. That is something in hot climates where we are or even in cold climates, that is an awesome feature to have. So one of the CRV's biggest competitor is the RAV4, which the RAV4 actually, apples to apples, is a pretty good car and around the same price. So comparing the two, if you're going to buy a CRV or a RAV4, you really can't go wrong either way. So we're just looking at this one in this instance. If I had a choice of buying the two, I've had Hondas and I've had Toyotas. I like them both. You really can't go wrong. So if you're comparing the CRV to the Acura, you're going to run into two issues. And what are those two issues? The headlights. The headlights on the CRV are normal headlights. The headlights on an Acura, depending on what year, when you go back, a lot of the headlights have issues where the water can build up inside. I've seen it with the new LED versions where you're starting to see the moisture build up on the inside, and you'll see it with the older versions prior to the LEDs. So as you can see in here, it's a pretty nice little setup. And this is pretty luxurious for a Honda, I would say. I put this in reverse. That's what's really nice, where it has that, and you turn the steering wheel and it bends over. That's pretty cool. If I'm putting it in drive, and I put on my turn signal, I'm putting on my right turn signal, it's showing me the right-hand side. It's nice that it has those different features on here for the steering wheel, and has all the Bluetooth, HDMI, all that capability syncing up. So I really love that feature and the push to start. And there's a key fob that got rid of the dreaded old keys that these used to come with. So in January 2023, you can get a 2015 EXL for anywhere in the $15,000 to $20,000 range here in Tampa, Florida. So that's going to vary where you're at in different parts of the country, but in general, that's kind of the price range with anything from around 50,000 miles to 120,000 miles. And that's kind of the sweet spot. If you're going to be buying a used car, hey, obviously if you can get it towards 50,000 miles, that's great, but you're going to be paying closer to the $20,000 range. And if you're looking to buy one of these somewhere in the 15,000, maybe 14,007 range, then yeah, you're gonna be looking at 120, 130,000 miles. I have faith in buying one of these vehicles in that kind of higher mileage category. All my vehicles, I usually buy 100,000 miles plus. Anywhere in that sweet spot with 100,000 mile range is gonna be pretty good. What you have to be aware of though is vehicles like this here in Florida is the compressor on the AC, where that AC is running all the time, and that's gonna be an expensive repair that you might have to deal with. So look into what that might cost to replace the compressor on one of these, because the metal can kind of go into the whole system, and you have to worry about cleaning the whole thing out. But that's no different with if you're looking at a RAV4, if you're looking at a Tacoma. The Tacoma, you have to pull the whole dash out, or the 4Runners. So it just depends on what you're looking at. No matter what vehicle you're buying, if you can find one that was garage kept, that is a very good thing. If I can find one of these that looks like it was garage kept, that's going to save on the paint, because Hondas are notorious for the paint fading off. Trust me, I know. If you don't believe me, check out the 2005 Accord I painted with Rust-Oleum. It is a real thing. Another thing on these as well is the leather interior on them tends to crack and get crappy. This one's holding up pretty well for a Honda, actually, being in 2015. It's pretty mint condition, but they do have issues with that. So if you can find a really good garage kept version of these, then you're in good shape with that. So I like to check out the vehicle history ownership. So even though if I'm buying this in a tropical state like Florida, or if I'm buying it in Arizona or California, I might want to look at the vehicle history and see if somebody bought this in Maryland and drove it down here, bought it in Virginia and then drove it down to Florida. Too many times, I've even seen cars that say that they were in Florida the entire lifespan, and I go underneath and I can pick a piece of the exhaust off with my finger. So it obviously drove north and was a snowbird and experienced a lot of salty climate. So if you're trying to stay away from a car that has that, make sure you check the Carfax on that. You can get those practically free, or for the most part these days. And look at that vehicle history, see if there's any accidents and what type of damage that was done. And see how many owners as well. There's a lot of different issues you may want to look at. Now let's talk about ride quality for a second. So if we're thinking about ride quality, yeah, this is a Honda. It's going to ride a little rough. This is not an Acura. Okay, so think about it in those terms. It's going to ride more like a Civic than it is an Acura. An Acura is not going to ride like a Civic. It's their introductory luxury. So that's what you're paying for. You're getting a little less ride quality with this. I think the ride quality is good overall. However, there is a Honda technical bulletin out about this vehicle where there's a resonating vibration that you can feel in the seat rest while you're sitting at a stoplight with your foot on the brake while in gear. And that's actually derived from the radiator actually vibrates on the inside, causing this resonating vibration. So Honda is aware of it. They're not fixing it for free, so it's not a recall, because it's not going to end in bodily harm or anything like that. So they're not going to fix it. But as long as you know that that is something that you may face with this, if it hasn't been remedied, that you're going to have to pay at the dealer to do that, or just suffer through the vibration, know you got a heck of a deal on this used car versus buying practically new prices on it. And the ride quality of this might be something you want to consider if you're looking at a RAV4, if you're looking at an Acura, and is it worth the amount of money between the two? Overall, I think the ride quality is pretty good. I love this inside part of the CRV. The steering wheel is very similar to how they started making them in the Acuras in kind of the early 2000s. It's got just a nice feel, nice ergonomic feel to it. The layout's nice. It's even got some classy wood looking features on here. This radio was created in the 11th hour over at Honda, where they still have these analog buttons on the side and then kind of the touch features on it. And there's issues with going back and forth on the screens. But it's still a nice double din size, so you can yank this out and put in a different stereo at any time. And nowadays they're making all kinds of different CarPlay adaptions that you can add to this and really integrate your phone pretty easily. This also has a couple USBs and an HDMI for that as well. So there's some pretty, it's really not a bad feature. And the only issue is if you go to aftermarket with this has some really cool cameras on the side mirrors that I'm going to show you in the reverse. That you'll have to integrate to this. And I'm sure there's some integrated packaging out there that can integrate aftermarket stereos to that. Pretty standard. It's got the funky little thing where you can talk to the people in the back or keep an eye on your kids with the mirror up here. That's always a nice standard Honda feature. Last things we got to talk about. The AC compressor does have some premature fail on it, and it's kind of expensive, so look into that. Think about that as in terms of an expense you may incur with one of these. The automatic transmission also has a little hesitation. There's a solenoid you can replace. You can do a flush that can help with that. There's a little hesitation from first to second gear, so that's something to consider when purchasing one of these. There's an oil sending unit, oil pressure switch that I think actually I had that same issue on my 05 Accord. Apparently they haven't fixed that ever, and that leaks or whatever. That's whatever, not a big deal. There's some parasitic draws with the batteries on some of these, and that's actually been linked to the stability control on some of these vehicles, so where it can actually drain your battery after a couple days of not driving. So that's something you may encounter on one of these vehicles. On the automatic transmission, there's a linear solenoid that can result in some slipping or a little hesitation from first to second gear or off the line. There was some hesitation with just coming off the line. I realized it was underinflated tires. So if you're having any issues, make sure your tires are inflated with that. I know that sounds kind of weird, but that's some of the issues they were running into with this vehicle. And this is the last thing we're going to talk about, water entry. So water entry at the cowl. So you can reseal the cowl to keep water from coming in, but you get water on the floor mats on the front driver's and passenger side. And maybe it's because of this. Let's take a look. You know, you see all this buildup on these cars, right? Does that have anything to do with the cowl leaking? I don't know, but I've never sealed a cowl before, but that's where your water is intruding here, possibly from this lake of leaves that can build up in there, and that you will start getting water under the floorboards on both sides of the vehicle, and that's who wants to reseal their cowl. So with all the minimal problems that this vehicle comes with, I definitely would say if I had a choice to buy a vehicle in a used category for under $20,000, this would be one of my top picks. The RAV4 also as well is a very good vehicle. But I do love the Hondas, and they're very interchangeable, Honda and Toyota. Remember, you're getting into the Lexus and you're getting into the Acura. They come with their own set of issues because it has more things that can go wrong on them. So obviously they're both Honda and Toyota as well, but they are more expensive for a reason because they have more gadgets and more gadgets break. So think about that if you're buying a bare bones vehicle or something lower down. I definitely love this CRV. Maybe it's not the styling look that you're going for. That might be a factor that it comes down to, but overall quality of a vehicle that you're getting, you really can't beat the package, the value you're getting for the price, especially nowadays when cars are $50,000, $60,000. For cars that are gonna probably break down a whole lot more than these Hondas. So my brother had a Honda Pilot and he run that thing out of oil down to where I had to go put 2 quarts of oil in before it even registered oil on the dipstick, and he drove the wheels off of that. So Hondas can go pretty long. Don't abuse them like that, but if you take care of them, they can go a long way. So anyways, mention any comments that you might come up. Hopefully I can answer them, and we'll catch you later.